Welcome back to Let the Chips Fly podcast. And in this episode, we talk about the 2026 March newsletter called Chips from the Charlotte Woodcarvers.
Yeah, and this one is definitely a bit of a departure for us.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this. Because on the surface, you might be thinking...
A club newsletter.
Right, a club newsletter,
Right.
really. I mean, we usually dive into, heavy research papers or historical biographies.
Yeah, it sounds a bit mundane at first glance.
Exactly. But when you actually read through this document, it reveals itself to be much more than just a schedule of local events and announcements. It is a highly detailed living window into a thriving subculture.
Oh, absolutely.
We are looking at a community that is deeply passionate, extensively structured, and actively preserving an analog craft in a hyper-digital world.
It really is a compelling piece of source material. When we examine this newsletter, what we're actually getting is, well, it's a masterclass in community building, in event management, and really in the delicate art of volunteer coordination.
Yeah.
It acts as a blueprint. It shows exactly how a niche hobby doesn't just, survive the passage of time, but actively grows over decades.
But is a local club newsletter really a blueprint? I mean, for you listening, how does a standard schedule of events teach us about community building on a larger scale? Like, what makes this specific document so revealing?
I think it's all in the execution, really, and the underlying structure. The newsletter doesn't just list dates.
Right.
It documents an entire ecosystem of mutual aid. It shows how responsibilities are distributed, how commercial and artistic interests are balanced.
And how knowledge is passed down.
Exactly. For anyone trying to build a resilient organization, whether that's a neighborhood association, maybe a corporate team, or a specialized hobby group, this document outlines the required architecture.
Wow.
It demonstrates that longevity isn't accidental. It's the result of very deliberate social engineering and a shared sense of purpose.
That is a great way to frame it. And for you listening, whether you are trying to organize a local community event, whether you're leading a team at work, or you're just curious about how these passionate niche communities sustain themselves against the current of modern distractions, this deep dive is going to reveal the anatomy of a successful volunteer ecosystem.
Definitely.
So let's look at the main event they are gearing up for. They are preparing for their 43rd showcase of wood carvings.
43rd. That's impressive.
Right. Taking place April 17th through the 19th, 2026, right in Charlotte, North Carolina. And they proudly bill this as the largest carving show. The theme for this year's showcase is simple, but highly revealing. Help, I need somebody.
What's fascinating here is how explicit that theme is. Help, I need somebody.
Yeah, the Beatles lyric.
Right, it's not just a catchy Beatles lyric. It is a foundational truth of their organization. By leaning into this theme, the club is explicitly valuing its volunteers.
They aren't trying to hide the labor?
Not at all. They aren't trying to hide the labor that goes into a large-scale event like this. Instead, they are putting it front and center. When you read through the newsletter, they call out specific roles and the exact people filling them.
Which creates accountability.
It creates a sense of public accountability, yeah, but more importantly, it fosters immense community pride. When people feel seen and essential, they stay engaged.
How does that play out in the text itself, though? Are they just listing names in a directory, or do we actually get a sense of who these people are?
Oh, we absolutely get a sense of their personalities. The way the newsletter highlights these individuals brings the whole club to life. It breaks down the anonymity that usually plagues large organizations.
You start to see the distinct domains they manage.
Yeah, and how those domains overlap to actually create the event.
Let's look at the show chairman, Keith Jones, as a primary example. His job sounds monumental. He's making sure they are ready for the big day, handling everything from venue contracts to fire inspections. I imagine navigating municipal red tape for a public event filled with sharp tools and wood shavings is no small feat.
Definitely not.
But later in the newsletter, in the section about what members are actively working on at their home workbenches, we find out Keith is still finding time to paint a toothpick holder.
I love that.
Right. The guy running the largest carving show in the region is painting a wooden toothpick holder. I love that detail, but what does it actually tell us about the club's leadership?
It's a crucial grounding detail. It shows that leadership in these types of organizations isn't detached from the rank and file.
Right. He's not just an executive in a corner office.
Exactly. In a lot of corporate structures, the higher up you go, the further removed you become from the actual product or service. Here, the person at the top dealing with the municipal logistics is still sitting at the table, participating in the core activity that brought them all together in the first place.
It maintains the purity of the club's mission.
Yes. Keith isn't just an administrator, he's a fellow carver.
That makes a lot of sense. And then we have Neil McGuire. Neil is the editor of the newsletter, but he also hands up the print advertising and the Facebook and Instagram posts. And the newsletter includes this incredibly funny, aside from the president, Steve Stilitano.
Yeah, he writes about Neil.
He says, "You might think he is a millennial based on his role, but he is not."
That line does a lot of heavy lifting.
It really does.
Not only does it inject a great sense of humor, but it also speaks volumes about the demographic realities and the adaptable nature of this club. Woodcarving is traditionally an older demographics pursuit,
Sure.
but they recognize the absolute necessity of modern digital marketing to survive.
You need Instagram and Facebook to reach new audiences and announce events today.
Exactly. And instead of outsourcing it to an agency or just ignoring the technology, a veteran member steps up to learn the tools of the modern age. It shows an organization that refuses to be left behind by time.
Which brings us perfectly to Mike Lennon. Mike is described as the mastermind who is dragging the club's registration process, kicking and screaming into the 21st century.
A total overhaul.
Yeah, the newsletter literally calls his work a game changer that sets them apart from other shows. And on top of that, he's the guy who created their Spotify podcast.
A woodcarving podcast.
I know. It's this blend of the ancient art of whittling wood and modern digital infrastructure. But it's not all high-tech. We have to mention Rocky Piano.
The AV specialist.
Right. The newsletter specifically thanks Rocky for making sure the antique video camera they own is actually working during their educational seminars. Just picture that. They're using an antique camera to record people practicing an ancient craft.
It's great.
The juxtaposition is fantastic, but does relying on old tech like that hold them back?
Not at all. It actually adds a rich texture to the community profile.
Yeah.
It shows resourcefulness. Everyone has their distinct domain, and they use whatever tools they have available to contribute. Even the judges, Bill Dominic and Rod Gatlin, have a specific dynamic outlined in the text. The newsletter thanks them and notes that their decisions are final on the show floor, with the immediate cheeky caveat that, unfortunately, that is not true any other time.
That kind of gentle ribbing is usually a sign of a pretty healthy social ecosystem, right?
Exactly. It's the hallmark of a community where people actually know, respect, and genuinely like each other.
Yeah.
You don't publish a joke like that in an official document unless there is a deep foundation of trust. It's a sign of a mature organization that doesn't take itself too seriously, even while taking the craft very seriously.
Now, keeping an ecosystem like this alive, especially a 43-year-old one, requires more than just good vibes and volunteer hours.
Absolutely.
It requires logistics, and quite frankly, it requires funding. This brings us to the microeconomy of this niche craft. The newsletter dedicates a significant amount of space to vendor relations and their extensive raffle table. Let's look at the vendors first. Keith Jones, the chairman, writes a letter directly to them. He thanks them for their intricate carvings, high-quality tools, and their unique burls. Now, for listeners who might only buy standard 2x4 lumber at a hardware store, what exactly is a burl, and why do carvers want them so badly?
That's a great question. A burl is essentially a tree growth or deformity.
Okay.
It's those large, rounded knots you sometimes see on the sides of tree trunks. They're usually caused by some kind of stress, a virus, a fungus, or an injury to the tree.
Oh, wow.
But because of that stress, the grain inside the burl grows in incredibly chaotic, twisted, and beautiful patterns rather than straight up and down.
So it looks amazing when you cut into it.
Exactly. For a woodcarver or a woodturner, a burl is highly prized because of those unique patterns and also because the interlocking grain makes it very resistant to splitting.
Which you'd want if you're carving it.
Right. You can't just go to a big box hardware store and buy a good burl. You need specialized vendors who source and prepare them.
So the vendors are bringing these specialized, hard-to-find materials. But Keith also lays down the law regarding show etiquette.
He does.
He respectfully but firmly requests that vendors remain at their booths until the official closing time. How does a club manage that tension between commercial interests and a passionate hobbyist space?
Keith's letter strikes a delicate balance. He explicitly acknowledges that the vendors are what truly bring this showcase to life. If you think about the ecosystem of a hobbyist convention, it's entirely symbiotic.
The makers and the sellers.
Exactly. The artisans need raw materials, like those unique burls. They need specialized tools, gouges, V-tools, micro-chisels that require a specific supply chain.
Right.
The vendors supply these and, in turn, rely on the concentrated gathering of highly motivated buyers.
But if the vendors pack up early to beat traffic, it ruins the experience for the attendees who paid to be there.
Precisely. The club has a duty to the public and to its members. So Keith establishes clear professional boundaries. He even asks the vendors to complete a feedback survey afterward.
Oh, a survey. That's very organized.
It is. By doing this, he treats the local hobby show with the logistical seriousness of a major industry trade show. It shows respect for the vendor's time while demanding respect for the event's integrity.
That seriousness really pays off, especially when you look at how they manage the raffle and silent auction.
It's huge.
The goal they've set is staggering. Over 100 raffle items and 8 to 10 silent auction items. The president, Steve Stilitano, runs the raffle table using a systematic approach created by another member, Bob Warner. But looking at the list of donors really highlights the scale of this microeconomy.
The diversity of the donor list is a fantastic indicator of the event's reach and influence.
Yeah.
On the corporate side, you have major companies like Proxen, Worksharp, and Council Tool. You even have media representation from Woodsmith and popular woodworking magazines.
So real industry players.
Right. These entities aren't just donating out of the goodness of their hearts. They recognize the Charlotte Woodcarvers showcase as a premier gathering of their core demographic.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's look at what is actually sitting on this massive raffle table. From the corporate side, you have Council Tool donating a heavy-duty 16-inch camp carver axe.
A beast of a tool.
A serious, rugged piece of steel meant for chopping blocks of wood. And right alongside it, you have deeply personal, intricate art pieces donated by the carvers themselves. You have Tom Gow donating a cottonwood bark house.
Beautiful work.
You have Greg Barnes donating a carving of a gnome with a butterfly. You literally have a 16-inch axe sitting next to a delicate wooden butterfly.
That visual contrast perfectly captures the entire spectrum of this craft.
It really does.
It represents the journey of the material itself.
Yeah.
You start with the heavy, aggressive tools, the axes and the saws, to remove the bulk of the wood from the log.
Right.
And you end with the delicate, precise hand tools to carve the paper-thin wings of a butterfly or the tiny shingles of a bark house.
It's like the raffle table is a physical manifestation of the woodcarver's process.
Exactly. And it's funded and supplied by both the global industry and the local artisans. The corporations provide the means of production, and the artisans donate the beautiful results of that production, which then funds the club to keep the whole cycle going.
Wow.
It's a beautifully closed-loop economy. It demonstrates a profound level of mutual aid within the subculture.
Speaking of the beautiful results of that production, let's look at the actual art being made. The newsletter has a section called What We Doin', which acts as a status update on the members' current projects.
I love this section.
It's so good. And since we are on audio, we need to really describe what's happening here. The imagery is phenomenal. We have Rick Manning, who is continuing his project of carving dogs howling at the moon. Capturing the anatomy and the specific expression of a howling dog in a static piece of wood requires serious observation.
Absolutely.
Will Robinson is working on a squirrel. Joe Davis is carving a bagpipe player, which means he's likely trying to carve the intricate folds of a tartan kilt out of timber. And Dave Clark is churning out more Christmas trees.
And beyond the subjects themselves, we also see the ambition within the club's ranks.
Yeah.
The editor notes that Bob Gerby is working on another bark carving and mentions that Bob seems to aspire to be the Tom Gow of the club. Yeah. Tom Gow, of course, being the master who donated that intricate cottonwood bark house to the raffle.
Why is that dynamic important to point out in a newsletter?
It shows that within this group, there are internal heroes.
Oh.
There are masters and apprentices, even if those titles aren't formally assigned in the bylaws. There is a standard of excellence that members are pushing each other toward. Mentorship is happening organically.
Oh.
Bob is looking at Tom's work and setting a benchmark for his own progress.
You can see that standard of excellence in the visual evidence provided in the sources, too. The newsletter features photos of pieces that are incredibly striking. There's a wide piece of flat wood where the carver has meticulously scraped away layers to reveal a rustic barn with a large water wheel attached.
A relief carving.
Framed by the rough texture of a tree trunk. It's surprisingly difficult to achieve that kind of depth and perspective on a completely flat piece of wood. It completely changes how you view a simple block of timber. And then there are mentions of geometric chip carvings. What does that actually look like in practice for someone who has never seen one?
Chip carving is a very specific style. Instead of carving a 3D figure like a dog or a gnome, the carver starts with a flat board.
Okay.
Using just one or two specialized short-bladed knives, they remove precise geometric chips of wood from the surface.
Oh, I see.
When you combine hundreds of these tiny angled cuts, you create complex patterns that look like intricate mandalas, complex compass roses, or woven Celtic knots perfectly inset into wooden discs. It relies entirely on symmetry and the interplay of light and shadow within the cuts.
That level of precision sounds like it would require incredibly sharp tools. If the knife is dull, it would just crush the wood fibers instead of slicing them cleanly, right?
That is exactly the challenge. And the newsletter addresses this directly in a very thoughtful section on sharpening tools, summarizing an article by a writer known as Carver.
Carver Bach.
Right. The piece outlines the necessary progression of sharpening. It's not just about taking a piece of metal to a grinder. You have to move through specific, deliberate stages. You start with coarse removal to shape the bevel of the blade.
Make the angle.
Yeah, but then you have to refine it, moving all the way to delicate polishing using leather strops and compounds.
I know what a leather strop is from old barbershop movies, but what are compounds and why are they necessary for a wood carving tool?
A compound is essentially a microabrasive paste or wax that you rub onto the leather strop. After you've used stones to get the blade sharp, you drag the blade backward across the leather strop with the compound on it.
Okay.
This polishes the metal to a mirror finish, removing any microscopic burrs or scratches left by the stones. The goal isn't just to make the tool capable of cutting. The goal is to make the edge durable and precise.
Because if it's not...
If the edge is just sharp but too thin, it chips the moment it hits hardwood. If it's too thick, it won't cut cleanly through those intricate geometric chip carvings. It requires immense patience to find the perfect geometry for the tool.
It sounds like the process of preparing to carve takes almost as much focus as the carving itself.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this article on sharpening is the perfect metaphor for the Charlotte Woodcarvers Club itself.
Ooh, I like that.
Building a community that lasts for 43 years is exactly like sharpening a fine gouge or chisel.
How so?
You start with the coarse, heavy lifting, getting the initial venue, writing the foundational bylaws, dealing with the friction of starting something from scratch.
And for broad strokes.
But you can't stop there, or the club will just be blunt and ineffective over time. Over the decades, you have to continually polish and refine the organization. You adapt to new technologies, like Mike Lennon bringing in modern registration software and podcasts to reach a new demographic. You refine the social dynamics, ensuring volunteers are recognized and valued. By moving through these stages of continuous refinement, you ensure the community is not just active, but durable and precise in its mission.
That is a brilliant way to look at it. This slow, deliberate process of making a physical tool resilient mirrors the process of making a volunteer organization resilient. And you see the results of that resilience in the way they care for each other on a human level.
You really do.
In the president's message, Steve Silitano doesn't just talk about the business of the upcoming show. He gives personal member shout-outs. He mentions Johnny Mayo, Jay Haynes, and Cheryl Gerb, who have been under the weather, wishing them a speedy recovery.
That human touch is vital.
It is. He genuinely thanks visitors who drove all the way from Connecticut, not just for coming to a past event, but for gifting the club a coffee maker.
A coffee maker, yeah.
And he makes sure Betty Negus is thanked for consistently providing the donuts and coffee. It's all these tiny, polished interactions that create a sharp, durable community.
They're maintaining an intricate, well-oiled machine of human connection. The wood carvings, the bagpipe players, the howling dogs, the water wheels, the intricate geometric patterns, those are the beautiful, tangible outputs of the club.
Absolutely.
But the true masterpiece they're continually working on is the community itself. It's an environment of shared knowledge, hospitality, and mutual support that allows the physical art to happen in the first place. Without the community structure, the art becomes isolated.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this deep dive right now? It means that behind every successful hobby, behind every seamless local event, there is an architecture of effort. There is a Keith managing the contracts, a Rocky fixing the antique camera, a Mike modernizing the spreadsheets, and a Betty bringing the donuts. The Charlotte Woodcarvers aren't just making wooden figures. They are carving out a space for human connection and demonstrating how to sustain an analog craft through dedicated organization.
And this raises an important question for all of us to consider. In a modern era of instant gratification, where communication often moves at the speed of a scrolling algorithm, what is the wood carving in your life?
That's a great question.
What is the analog community, the slow, deliberate skill, or the local organization that you are helping to sustain? Because, as this newsletter proves, these spaces don't just exist by magic or momentum. They require people willing to raise their hand, step into the friction, and respond when the call goes out. Help, I need somebody.
Go to charlottewoodcarvers.com/newsletters for the PDF version of this newsletter and all the past newsletters dating back to 1983.